Welcome back to Fire Talks. My name is Chief Brunette. I am the Chief of the Fire and Life Safety Section with the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control. I'm so happy to have with me today three of our team members. First, we've got Morgan Matthews. She is a professional development educator. Then we have Bryan Kendall. He is a unit chief for inspections. And for this talk, it'll be inspections of fireworks. And then also we have Melissa Neff, who is one of our community risk reduction specialists. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to have you just take a minute and tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves. Bryan, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, my name is Bryan Kendall. I am the inspection unit chief that I oversee several of our programs: suppression, fire sprinklers, schools, casinos, and fireworks, obviously. I've been in the fire service since '94 and don't seem to be, I won't be leaving that anytime soon. So that's a little bit of my history.
Very good. Thank you, Bryan. And then Morgan, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Chris. So my name is Morgan Matthew. I'm a fire code professional development officer at the Division of Fire Prevention and Control. I work with Melissa in the community risk reduction and education branch. And part of our mission is to take sort of the training approach to increasing public safety in Colorado. So part of my role is to provide education to authorities having jurisdiction, or HJs as we call them. Mostly that is on the fire side for me, right? So fire marshal staff, things like that. But we'll talk about today that I also helped a little bit with law enforcement too, in regards to fireworks.
Great. Thank you so much, Morgan. And last but certainly not least, Melissa, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. My name is Melissa Neff, and I am the Community Risk Reduction Specialist for the southeast part of the state. I've been with DFPC for about a year and a half now, so this is relatively new to me. However, working with public education and community education is not. So I'm really excited to be with the division and be able to help our different agencies work on their community risk assessments, as well as work on community programs and education programs like the one that we'll talk about today with fireworks safety.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. And yeah, so that's our topic for today is fireworks. We're recording this at the end of July. We just had a successful Independence Day and fireworks season, but it hasn't always been that way. When the division started monitoring and enforcing restrictions on fireworks in Colorado, it was kind of an uphill battle. We had a lot of people buying and using illegal or non-permissible fireworks, as we call them. And so we, a couple of years back, really tried to focus on how we can reduce the use of non-permissible fireworks in Colorado and really make it safer for our communities. And so these three from our team really have stepped up and kind of taken on the role of helping to reduce the instances of particularly fire, but other emergencies caused by fireworks. And so that's what we're talking about today on Fire Talks. And so just to kind of start things off, Bryan, I'd like, if you will, for you to provide our listeners with some of the history of the fireworks program, and then how did we arrive at where we are today?
Oh, absolutely. So the fireworks regulatory program has been under our guidance for almost as long as we've been a state organization, even far back as when we were the Division of Fire Safety within the Department of Public Safety. In fact, fireworks was, I believe, the second program that we took on right after doing firefighter certifications. And for the longest time, our main focus was strictly that regulatory aspect. We licensed the retailers, wholesalers, and exporters of fireworks in our state. And we also did annual firework stand inspections and did the enforcement as necessary. And we did that for the longest time. So our education collaboration started almost 6 years ago. And funny enough, it began with a very, very angry wholesaler egg-laying chicken fireworks and the thought that there's got to be a better way to do things. So when I started as an inspector, fireworks stands was one of my assignments. And I approached this site owner, or I was on a site, and the site owner saw me and made a beeline to me. He was visibly upset. You knew he wanted to vent. And he started our conversation with, why do my stands keep getting violations about these chickens? Well, that's the G-rated version of the start of the conversation that we had, and it went from there. So over the next hour or so, we had a really, really great talk. And through that entire talk, what was happening in the back of my mind, I kept hearing this saying that this well-loved, well-renowned fire chief used to say, we can do better. So when I got back to the office, I reached out to my then supervisor. He got me in contact with Britton Cottrell, who was heading TNT Fireworks in Colorado. And asking Britton, he had a lot of these same frustrations that they just don't know what they don't know. So we all sat down, the wholesalers, the DFPC representatives, and we came up with this great checklist that the wholesalers can send out with the package with the fireworks to all these retail stands about requirements, common issues that are seen, what's legal, what's not legal, what they have to have at a bare minimum. And happily, I can say that that first year after we sent out these checklists, every stand that these two wholesalers supplied had 0 violations completely throughout the state.
Wow, that's great. And that was all just because of the partnership with a retailer or one of our contributors to fireworks in Colorado. So I'm glad you brought up Britton, because Britton was instrumental in the development of the Bucket Brigade here in Colorado. And Melissa, I was hoping that maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit about the Bucket Brigade and what that initiative is, and then what you're doing to get the word out about it.
You bet. Like Bryan was saying, although we've been kind of focused on fireworks safety for several years, our program became, I guess you would say, more robust in the last year or so. In 2024, my unit chief, Kim Spuler, really kind of jumped into the Bucket Brigade program, and she created an interactive educational video and lesson plan, and worked with the American Pyrotechnics Association Safety and Education Foundation to have some large stickers made that can be put on the side of buckets, and those stickers give people instructions on, filling it with water, soaking your used fireworks, and then disposing of the wet fireworks, which was the best practice that we really wanted to get out to people, rather than having them put their spent fireworks directly into the trash. So when that started last year, that gave us, those of us that are the risk reduction specialists, it gave us something tangible to take out to the different agencies. And when I was out and about in the state, I was actually at the La Junta Fire Department talking with them, took them some stickers, talked about what they do for programming. And they had mentioned to me that they work hand in hand with their local library as part of their summer reading program each year to do their fireworks safety program. So that sparked an idea for me that perhaps we could work with all of the libraries in the state, or at least push out some information to them to use during their summer reading program. So we contacted the Colorado Department of Education. They have a small unit that's what they do, is provide resources to libraries for that summer reading program. And we were able to put our information on their listserv that goes out to all the libraries. And we created kind of a Google Drive of resources for them to use, things that they could print out. But the big thing that we did was get them the stickers to use for the program, and then resources for them to use to contact their local fire department and ask them to come out and work with them. So that made it more interactive, and we had several libraries take advantage of that. We even had a couple libraries in other states, because that listserv, I'm sure, gets shared among people. So we had a library in New Mexico as well as Hawaii contact us, and we did send them some resources as well. Of course, with the caveat that we wanted them to work with their local fire department and make sure that the messaging that we were putting out also went along with the messaging that their agency had. But that was really kind of neat to find out that this was something, that was important everywhere. And it also showed us how important it is to build the relationships between agencies. We had several libraries give us feedback that they had a great time with the program, And we found that those libraries that really did work together with their local fire department had a lot of fun with it. The libraries that tried to go it on their own didn't find it as dynamic. And so we know now that that is something we're going to help them build for the future in order to keep the program fun for everyone.
Such good work, and what a great idea to take to the libraries. We know that our kids and children like going in the libraries. It's just a good place to really connect, and something that I never would have thought of, but obviously has made an impact here. And I'm glad you brought up that other states had caught onto this and started working on it. So as I said, the bucket brigade started here in Colorado, but it's now, as far as we know, it's entered into and is being used by 8 different states, maybe more. But we know for sure Nevada, Hawaii, Texas, Kansas, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, and Utah all are doing an initiative dealing with the bucket brigade. And I think it's because of the simple brilliance of it. There's a simple genius to the bucket brigade. All it is asking people to keep that bucket of water nearby when they're using their fireworks to make sure that they're soaked and fully extinguished before they throw them away. But, it ties people to the fire service and what we do in the fire service to try and serve and protect our communities. A little background on the name for those of you who aren't aware. Early fire service was handled through buckets of water. I mean, the way to convey water to a fire was through a bucket. And so early firefighters, early fire service or departments were called bucket brigades. And that's really what they did. They took water to a fire in buckets. And so it just ties everything together so neatly, so nicely, but it sends a good message, and it's a good initiative to make sure that, our homes and communities are safe just by the simple act of making sure that when we use a firework, we're making sure they're fully extinguished before throwing them away. So it's a simple genius, like I said, but something that can really move the needle and help things along. But so much of what we've talked about today is education. There's we have the enforcement in this program where we're trying to make sure that people are selling the right things and using the right things that are allowable by law. And we only get so much compliance through enforcement. But I think we've all found that we get greater compliance and longer term compliance when people are well educated and understand the reasons behind the enforcement actions that we take. And so, Morgan, I'm going to jump over to you, because it sounds like, so much of this, that education is a big part of what we're trying to do to make the 4th of July more safe here in Colorado. So can you take some time and elaborate a little on what the educational outreach is that we're doing here with DFPC?
Sure, Chris. So to give a little bit of background, so the overall responsibility of the Division of Fire Prevention and Control is to, like Bryan Kendall said, give sort of that enforcement capability related to fireworks, right? So we license people who are part of commercial operations involving fireworks, so people who sell fireworks and people who use them in a commercial sense. In my prior role as a fire inspector for the state, I helped do some of those fireworks stands inspections. But when I moved on to this role, sort of as like a training officer position, I remember being in a meeting with a bunch of other fire marshals sort of in the northern Colorado area. And one of the fire marshals said, I don't know what fireworks are legal or illegal for people to have in Colorado without special licensing. And I thought, holy cow, look, we have a huge opportunity to not only educate our incoming new inspectors, right, in their roles doing state fireworks inspections, but also the HJs that can do fireworks stand inspections on our behalf. So 2024 was really when we formalized a training program directed towards fire agencies and law enforcement officials that have a statutory authority to help us with fireworks safety across the state, right? We got all this data about, like, we don't know what the requirements are. We don't even know where the fireworks rules are. So part of the training that I've been giving the last 2 years is to talk about what the state requirements are, right? Like, what kind of people do we license? So in the state of Colorado, we license people who sell retail fireworks to consumers. People who sell fireworks to fireworks, we call them shooters in the industry, right? The people who detonate fireworks or use them in pyrotechnic operations like concerts that have some sort of fireworks in them. People who wholesale fireworks, so the people who distribute and sell their material to people who are retailers. The people who export fireworks, right? Those people get to have the really cool fireworks that are both permissible and non-permissible, as long as they sell those fireworks to people who are licensed within the state of Colorado to have those, and then other people out of state. And then also our operators, right? Everybody knows our fireworks display operators, right? They do the big aerial shows, and then the pyrotechnic operators that do sort of more intimate shows that can be outdoors, but generally a lot of that's used for like indoor concerts, theatrical performances, places like that. So we got a lot of good information. So last year, the program started out as just giving information about sort of what the state has jurisdiction over, right? Because that's what we're experts in. We did I think we did 6 classes last year across the state. So this year we tried to repeat that, right? I ended up teaching 7 classes involving fireworks, which this year got updated because last year I got a lot of feedback, which was, Morgan, PowerPoints are super cool, but we want to actually like handle material and have like hands-on demos of stuff so we can understand what this stuff is, especially if it's equipment that they've never seen before, like a cold spark machine, for example. So this year I was able to partner with a couple different industry groups. So Rocky Mountain Pyrotechnics Guild, which is a nonprofit that does sort of fireworks training and education. They're based out of like the northeast part of Colorado, as well as Tri-State Fireworks. Both groups helped me in the Brighton class provide equipment, so cold spark equipment, ignition materials for aerial fireworks, right? Like the not detonation cord, but fuse material, some mortars, right, for the aerial fireworks that weren't live. They were like training mortars, as well as describing to HJs like what a good setup looks like at a fireworks display. If they run into something like a cold spark machine, what the potential hazards are, things like that. Because we had gotten feedback from HJs of like, for us, the retail stands are pretty easy to manage, generally speaking, right, between their inspection and permitting process. But they had a lot of questions about the fireworks actual operations. So we tried to provide greater education and feedback about this year. And for next year, we're hoping to increase more information about that. So partnering with RMPG to potentially facilitate all day display operator classes. So you can go there if like you're a fire marshal or law enforcement to understand like how these materials work. And then if you want to get licensing from the Division of Fire Prevention Control to actually become an operator, knowing the code requirements tied to that and how to successfully pass that test. Yeah. And then one of the biggest things I'm trying to tackle right now is helping law enforcement, especially, which generally has the authority to confiscate illegal fireworks, whether we find those on commercial operations, right? Like a retail stand, like Kendall mentioned, the illegal pooping chickens, or in the sense of like, you got a neighborhood, everybody's shooting off super illegal fireworks and you get called on. I've gotten a lot of feedback from law enforcement that they struggle to effectively enforce the state regulations sometimes because they don't have the resources or capability to store and then potentially dispose of that material once they have it, right? There's not a clear way across the state for law enforcement officials to do that. So I'm working with industry and some other HJs to try to figure out if there's a way to make that process more streamlined, in the hope that if we make it easier for groups like law enforcement to enforce the illegal fireworks portion of the state statute and rules, that'll ultimately make it'll be more of an incentive to enforce stuff, and it'll make everybody safer because people will realize that there are actually enforcement ties to possessing illegal fireworks, which ultimately keeps all of us safer, right? Because then we're not getting high capacity fireworks that could potentially cause greater damage, right? Catch a structure on fire, stuff like that. So that's sort of how we've tailored the education in the last 2 years. And we're always happy to take feedback. If people are like, Morgan, why didn't you talk about this? Contact me. Happy to add that to the training. Or if people are running into a safety hurdle that they think we can help them out with, please bring that to us. Because if we can't, we'll help you find somebody else who can.
Very good. Thank you, Morgan. Well, you're listening to Fire Talks. My name is Chief Brunette. I've been talking with DFPC staff, Bryan, Kendall, Melissa Neff, and Morgan Matthew, who's been telling us a little bit about the training and outreach we've been doing here in Colorado, as far as fireworks and permissible fireworks in particular. And speaking of that, Morgan, I was just wondering, when people ask you for a quick and easy way to know what's permissible and what's not permissible, or legal and illegal, how do you normally answer that? Is there a quick way to answer that so people know that they're buying legal fireworks when they go to do that?
Sure, Chris. That's actually a really good question. This is sort of advice that we give to both consumers and people who are doing fire inspection or law enforcement duties related to fireworks operations. So generally speaking, in the state of Colorado, if a firework just emits showers of sparks and it doesn't leave the ground, it's considered legal for regular people to have if they don't have special licensing. If you come across or possess fireworks that emit any sort of material, so like flaming pellets, projectile material, things like that, it leaves the ground, or it says it generates a loud report, those are considered illegal in Colorado. And if you're trying to figure out like, well, how the heck do I figure that out? Every firework is required by the federal government to have sort of a warning label about what's going to happen if I light this firework, right? So if you see on those warning labels that like your chicken laying an egg is going to emit showers of sparks, that's a kosher firework to have. But if you get another chicken that says it's going to emit flaming pellets, that would be considered an illegal product.
No, thank you, Morgan. That's a really good way to understand when I go to a retail store, what I should be buying. And if I see those things that are leaving the ground or make a loud explosion, then those probably aren't legal in Colorado, and I probably shouldn't buy them. But, and this question's for any one of you, if I am in Colorado and I want to see those bigger fireworks, knowing that I shouldn't be buying them or using them, what should I do if I want to see those?
Well, we always, of course, suggest that people go to public displays with their families, go together, enjoy the time together, take a picnic, have some fun, and make an event of it, because those are always going to be safer than something you may or may not have gotten from a reputable retailer.
No, thanks, Melissa. And so that goes in line with what Morgan was telling us, is that the folks who are putting on those bigger shows, they're licensed to do that. They're professionals who understand how to handle those larger materials. They've put the processes and the people in place to make sure that we're protecting our communities when they do them. And quite frankly, they put on a better show than anybody could in their backyard or out in their street. So I think what I hear commonly is, let's leave those big shows to the pros and make sure that, we're using permissible fireworks at our homes, but then going and enjoying the time with our families at a public park, having a picnic and seeing those bigger shows. So I appreciate you all so much for joining me today. Do any of you have any last tips or comments before we close out for today?
Yes, Chief, I've got a couple pro tips. We got a lot of feedback this year that there are several municipalities in Colorado that actually have completely outlawed fireworks possession and use, period, whether or not you have illegal or legal material. So just make sure that if you are going to end up buying fireworks, even if they're legal material, make sure wherever you live that it's actually legal for you to possess. So a good example is the city of Fort Collins. Fort Collins has banned the general public's possession of any kind of firework, as well as retail sales, for several years now. So we don't want people to go out and spend a bunch of money on fireworks, even if they're legal, if they can't actually possess them where they are. So just always check with that. Usually fire districts have that information up, or like when I was in Fort Collins, they've got those temporary movable road signs, right, saying like no fireworks allowed. And then potentially too, in Colorado, the middle of the summer is usually a very dry part of the year. So a lot of places may just ban fireworks possession or use because it's just too dry. So like I said, just make sure you've got all your ducks in a row before you go out and buy any material, because we don't want you guys to spend all that firework or have it stored in your garage over the winter. That is a safety hazard. And just make sure, probably the most effective way is do the shows. Those guys are professionals and they are much more capable of handling weather conditions and planning like that, because it's their job, right? That's their career. We consider them the experts. So
excellent feedback and recommendations, Morgan. Thank you so much. Bryan or Melissa, do either of you have any last comments before we close out today?
Yeah, I would like to add just a couple more things. If anyone out there, whether it's you're a library or any group or fire department is interested in developing more of a bucket brigade program for next year, feel free to contact any of the community risk reduction specialists, and we would love to help you get that in place. One of the things that you could start doing now would be seeking out donations of buckets. That was another benefit of the program. The way we did it this year is we used a lot of recycled buckets from places. Some of our agencies contacted restaurants, local hardware stores, and places like that. And so we were able to not only make sure that fireworks were used safely, but we were also able to recycle and reuse a lot of plastic buckets within the community. One of our departments has been collecting buckets all year long. They've just made arrangements with one of the bakeries in their community, so they save them. And it's really surprising how excited both kids and families get about having that bucket. Our fireworks stands that have the buckets available, they were able to give them to kids with the stickers, and they were able to carry their fireworks home in a bucket, and it was a lot of fun. But I would just say, if you would like more information or would like to start planning for next year, please feel free to contact your risk reduction specialist for your region.
That's so good. And knowing that the kids are buying in and actually enjoying themselves doing it is good to know, and gives me hope for the future that we're really going to tackle this problem in Colorado like we have been, and get on top of making sure that, you know, we start as few fires as possible during the fireworks season. Like Morgan said, it's right during the hot summer, and oftentimes we have dry conditions. And so everything we can do to help prevent fires from starting from fireworks is just a step in the right direction. Well, you've been listening to Fire Talks. With me today has been Melissa Neff, Bryan Kendall, and Morgan Matthew from the Division of Fire Prevention and Control here in Colorado. I appreciate you all joining me so much. I hope our listeners got a good idea of what to expect and what's allowed in Colorado during fireworks season and all year round, and also learned a little bit about how to prevent fires while using fireworks, in particular those permissible fireworks. So again, thank you for joining us. Everybody have a good day and take care.